Experts say if you want to understand how COVID spreads, check your toilet. And just like what you'll find there, the news isn't all that pretty. Wastewater samples revealing record levels of coronavirus across the U.S. NBC News reporter Alicia Lozano joins me now. Alicia, you spoke with the head of a wastewater epidemiology company in Massachusetts who says wastewater holds the key to better understanding this public health crisis. He told you every time an infected person uses the toilet, they are flushing this information down the toilet where it's collecting and aggregating and mixing with poop from thousands of other people. How does monitoring sewage measure COVID and other public health concerns? Enlighten us on what's going on in the poop there.
I know. So I'm going to try to keep the potty jokes to a bare minimum here. But basically, wastewater does actually hold quite a bit of information for researchers. And for many years, it has been used in other parts of the world to measure everything from obesity to polio to even the opioid epidemic. But now we're seeing it used here at home to measure COVID levels. And the way researchers do that is they separate the larger particles from the wastewater and extract that genetic material. And then they're able to amplify that material to study it in greater detail. And so what we're seeing right now, as we've been hearing about for weeks and weeks now, is that coronavirus is just about everywhere. And the interesting thing about wastewater is that everybody does use the sewage system. So whereas people might not be able to get a clinical test, they might not go to a hospital, they might not go to a clinic, or they might just take something at home. Perhaps they don't even have symptoms. And so they don't even know that they're spreading COVID. But when you look at the wastewater, they're able to measure how much coronavirus is actually circulating within any given community. And that is able to include people who don't have access to healthcare, who don't have access to health insurance, and who maybe don't even know that they have COVID to begin with. So what it's revealing is that it is much more rampant than we understood. And it also is able to inform public policy decisions because you see how much of this is spreading at any given time. It is
probably a dirty and not so pleasant job, but man, is it fascinating what we can learn from looking at the sewage. I know you've said that our wastewater is telling us that Omicron is basically rampant, or at least COVID is, whatever variant we're seeing right now. I know it's a mix. How else might experts use this, though, to learn more about this pandemic, to help us try to get past this pandemic? I mean, it seems like such a wealth of information is in our waste.
Right. So, I mean, the bigger picture here is that it is able to inform public policy decisions. So whereas people might not be exhibiting symptoms, for instance, but we're seeing that COVID is, in fact, spreading quite rampantly in a community, that's able to tell researchers, that's able to tell local leaders, you know what, there is COVID out there. It is much more than we realized. And perhaps we need to start making policy decisions that reflect what we're seeing in the wastewater. This has also been used to measure opioids, as I mentioned, and that's actually where some researchers in Massachusetts started doing this in the first place. And that, like COVID, is able to give this picture of what's happening in a community where people might not be open to talking about it, and they might not know themselves. So it's sort of this kind of underlying message that is lurking in our toilets, in our wastewater system, but it really does tell us a lot more than we realize about ourselves.
I hope we don't get to the point that we need this. Could you imagine, though, if someday our own toilets could tell us if we've tested positive and shouldn't leave the house? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we got to that place. Alicia, this was so interesting, albeit just a little bit gross. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.